The gene keys are this big, impressive system, but how do you actually work with them to create change in your life? Because you can read the books cover to cover, you can study for months or years, and the system won't change anything for you because that's not what it's about ultimately. Luckily for you, I can boil down how to work with the system into just one word. So this should be a relatively quick video today. Those of you that don't know me, my name's Jay. I look like a scrub today. I've got a microphone on my hat because I lost my lapel mic. Thank you for being here and giving me the benefit of the doubt. So, what good is just reading the book, right? What good is just knowledge? You've known that your entire life. You were brought up in a knowledge-based system. You went to school, I assume, at least most of you. And so you were taught how to study facts. You were taught how to memorize different things. You were taught how to use your left brain to store, recall, share, combine, create with that information. But the thing is, that's not what the gene keys are about. The gene keys teach us how to use the right side of our brain. They teach us how to see through the water eye, how to be softer, how to just allow these things in. It's a wisdom teaching. And we're taught that knowledge is the only way to take in information. And that's why when so many people start with this system, they just want to read the book or take the course or whatever. And they're just trying to suck in as much information as humanly possible because we're told we have more information. That gives us more options. We're able to combine things in new and novel ways. And in that way, we're able to kind of find success in the world. And information is helpful. But the last piece of that is just as important. The part where I said combine things in new and novel ways. And that comes from the right brain. That comes from the wisdom side of things. And so the knowledge picture is just an incomplete story. The gene keys are designed to come alive in your life. So what do I mean by this? So for example, I have the 30-second gene key as my life's work. That's failure at the shadow, preservation at the gift, and veneration at the city. So when I start to contemplate this gene key, and eventually I'll do a video on how I contemplate, but when I do, I read the words, yes, but then I also let the words wash over me and come into my heart space. And what starts to happen is pretty wild. And I guarantee you've had this experience where you buy a new car and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere out on the road. It's that idea with contemplation. So you study this gene key, and then all of a sudden it shows up in the outer world. You start to notice it. And so that 30-second gene key, that shadow of failure, is really intimately tied to money. I've got other videos on that if you want to understand why that is. But so for me, all sorts of money shit starts showing up in my life. I start to get worried about money. I don't think I'm going to have enough. I don't know if I'm going to be provided for. All of those things start to show up, but they show up so that I can turn towards them and face them. I went so long in my life having that come in and then just going directly into left brain problem solving mode. The way that I'm going to get through this is to figure it out and figure out a way to make money, and then I don't have to worry about it again. But inevitably, my expenses would rise and I would make more money, rise, make more, but the thing just kept coming back, that shadow. Because I wasn't actually dealing with the shadow, the underlying energy. I was trying to solve it in the outer world. Instead, I have to learn, had to learn, am still learning that money is really just one of the greatest spiritual teachers on planet Earth. I'll save that for another video as well. But the point is that you have got to notice these gene keys around you. You've got to notice it not just on a page, not just on a computer screen, but in your life, because it's in those moments in your life that you can respond differently. I promise I'm getting to the one word. It's coming. Stick with me. Now, in order to notice those things happening off the page, you've got to shift your awareness. Meaning, you've got to get to a place where you have some semblance of witness consciousness, right? Where you're able to be an active or passive, even observer of what's happening in your life. Because what happens with these 64 archetypes that are the gene keys is oftentimes the shadow is very charged. It's like a very high energy, especially if it's in your profile, especially if it's one of your prime gifts, which are the 4 gene keys in your activation sequence. And because they're so charged, they tend to overwhelm us. They tend to make us not present. We respond from the past or worrying about the future, but not in the now. And in that way, we miss out on the energy. We miss out on the ability to transmute it, to work with it, because we get so caught up in it that we think we are it. And that's why it's so important to develop this witness consciousness. And the best way that I know how to tune that awareness is through practices like anything. You've got to spend time in the witness state, in this open state that allows us to observe things. So here comes the word. You ready? It is contemplation is how we work with the gene keys. And I'm going to stick with me. I want to explain what I mean, because it's not just like thinking about it. It's not just noticing it, right? There's different phases and stages, but contemplation is the central technique. And contemplation for me is part of bringing meditation off of the cushion, bringing it out into your life. Now, there's really kind of 3 arms, and if you're not new to the channel, I'm sure you've heard this before, bear with me. The kind of the left path, right, the more masculine path, is the path of concentration. That's like Zen, right? Where you're like sitting bolt upright. You've got the Zen master behind you with this little stick smacking the crap out of you every time you wander off. And sometimes your body position doesn't even change. And you're like, how the hell did he know that I wandered off? But they know, because they are divine instruments. So that's concentration. Then on the other side, we've got meditation. And meditation, at least in the way I'm referencing here, is like a Dzogchen or a non-dual type of meditation where I'm not focusing on anything. It's just this open awareness, non-dual kind of, there is no me and thing I'm observing. There is just the union of those things, essentially. Contemplation is the middle way. It is the Tao, if you're familiar with the Tao Te Ching, or it's the way. It's the middle path. It combines elements of both of those things. And so we need to learn how we can bring our meditation off of the cushion, which means how can I carry that frequency? That I'm sitting on a meditation cushion right now. How can I bring that energy that I feel when I sit, right? And I feel my vertical spine and I feel that energy moving through me, and I feel so centered and so grounded and so calm and so peaceful. And then I go outside, I get in my truck, I start driving down the road, I get into a traffic situation, somebody cuts me off, and I'm, what the, right? And everything that I just had goes out the window. That's what we are working against. We've got to learn, how can I start to live my life from this centered, grounded place? And contemplation is an art that permeates all of life, because it takes the inner space and merges it with the outer space. So you don't need to be in an ashram in India. You don't need to be in silence. You don't need to be, in the Himalayas. You get to interact with the world and with other people in relationship. And it is in that interaction that you get fodder for your contemplation, that things drop in, right? Let's say, again, I was contemplating that idea of preservation, let's say, which, as I said, is the 30-second gift. And all of a sudden, somebody starts talking about investment, which preservation has a lot to do with deciding, like, what is worth spending your time, energy, and effort on. And so I'm moving through the world. I've got that in the back of my brain because I know how to contemplate. And then I start to pick that thing up in this investment conversation with somebody that I'm having. But I wouldn't notice that if I didn't tune my frequency to have that witness or observer consciousness so that I can notice these gene key archetypes showing up in the external world. And contemplation is an art, and it's an art that permeates everything. It is something, it's not a science. It's going to take trial and error and you finding your approach to contemplation. So don't let mine dictate what yours is. I have a very specific process, but that may or may not work for you. So how you use the system is not learning the system. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, is they want to understand all the 64 gene keys, or maybe at the very least all the gene keys in their profile. They want to read, the activation book and the Venus book and the Pearl book, and they want all of this information, but that's not how you work with the gene keys. That's just going to keep you in your mental body. It's going to keep you in the same loops that you've been in for most of my viewers 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. I know I got a wide age gap of people that watch me. So instead, the way that we use the system is to raise the frequency that is passing through my DNA. That's why it's called the gene keys. These archetypes live within our very DNA. And so through epigenetics, which if you're unfamiliar, that's basically like environmental conditions affect the expression of our genes. So through epigenetics, we're able to influence how our genes express. And gradually we can get our responses to things to change and shift because our internal state, our hormonal state shifts, and a different batch of hormones are released into our body, which allows me to respond in a different way. So there's a very physiological component to this thing. So we raise our frequency is the goal. And the way that that happens is through contemplation, by choosing to respond differently in a moment. So when I'm contemplating failure, I feel it, I see it, I notice it show up in my life in that moment. And I can choose, do I want to listen to that fear? Do I want to follow it? Or do I want to decide not that I'm going to run away from failure, but instead that I'm going to run towards what I want to preserve and bring forward out in the world? And when we do that over and over and over again, a new pathway gets greased inside of your body, and all of a sudden you respond in a different way without even needing to make the conscious choice of moving from fear or failure to preservation. So the kind of contemplation is 3 steps or 3 phases. And the first is pause. And that is where you need to spend all of your attention, because the pause is the thing that is in our conscious control. And all it means is taking time to stop, to slow down. We are all so busy, too busy. And we cannot see these universal frequencies that whisper to us. Our higher self whispers so gently. And meanwhile, we're out here listening to people scream. I almost named some people, but we're just going to let that go. We're listening to people scream. No way we're going to hear this gentle kind of tapping or whisper in our ear from our soul. So we learn to slow down, to change the rhythm of our life, to pause. And I'm going to talk about this practice called the triple flame, which is going to help with this pausing effort. So then we get into a pivot. And a pivot, also think of this as like a pivotal moment or a pivotal experience, right? It's this little mini breakthrough. It's like all of a sudden you're like, oh, I understand something differently. Like I thought I saw things this way, but really it's kind of more like this. And those pivots, those pivotal moments, they start to add up. They start to stack. They happen, for me, monthly, maybe, give or take. Sometimes, and it's not a consistent flow. Sometimes there's a lot and then none. Sometimes, it's all over the place. But those pivotal moments add up, and eventually we get to what the Gene Keys calls a merge. And emerge is where all those pivotal moments start. They just kind of suck into you. And all of a sudden, you've got a different worldview. You see things differently because those pivotal moments added up. And you're like, I can't see the world the same as I was seeing it before. So I've got to merge with this new way of being, with this new awareness. But the pause is the key, because I can't control the pivotal moment. I can't control the merge. Those are forces of involution that do that, right? The divine grace reaching down to help us along on our journey. From my evolutionary standpoint, I need to focus on creating the time to pause. And the one of the best ways, Richard Rudd, the founder of the Gene Keys, is brilliant for this. Such a simple practice, but it is very powerful, is what's called the contemplation of the triple flame. And the contemplation of the triple flame is setting, so you can get the Gene Keys app and just do this right through their app. I don't have it on my phone, so I can't really speak to it. I'm like, I hate notifications and try not to have my phone as much as humanly possible, although like all of us, I'm sure I have it way more than I want to. But the other option is you could set alarms, whether that's on a clock or on your phone. And the practice is this: every 3 hours, you're going to have an alarm go off or a notification if it's on the Gene Keys app, and you're going to pause for 3 minutes. And that means over the course of a day, you will have sat in stillness for about 15 minutes. Now, this is different from meditation, because with meditation, we're like planning ahead. We're working towards getting to the cushion. With this pause thing, it's like whatever you're doing, you're going to stop. You're going to set it down and you're going to take 3 minutes to connect and pause. Because remember, this is about bringing it off the meditation cushion, which means we've got to do it in times that we're not prepared for, in times that we might not want to, because we're up here in our logical brain or mind. And so the practice is to honor the alarm and to stop what you're doing. Now, there will probably be times, maybe you're in a meeting with somebody or cooking or whatever, and it's just not possible. And in those cases, you just do it as soon as you can. However, you need to be really honest with yourself. It's really easy to lie and say, I can't do this right now. I'm in the middle of this important thing, but in reality, you could. And you're just, your old way of awareness is trying to hold on, right? It doesn't want to let go. It doesn't want to die. It doesn't want to merge into the new version of self. So, for example, you do this at 9 a.m., noon, 3 p.m., 6 p.m., 9 p.m., right? Just kind of sitting there, enjoying the pause and dropping in whatever it is you're contemplating. Maybe that's a gene key, maybe that's a line, maybe that's a sphere. There's lots of different things that we can contemplate in the gene keys. And then eventually, what we can do is stop needing the alarm and just have that mode of awareness pretty much all the time. Slower pace, more open, more centered, keeping some in your heart so that you're not fully out in the world all the time. That's how we lose our center. And eventually, just we're able to pause at natural times. So maybe that's in some traffic and we're sitting there anyway, so we take a pause. Or it's in between things that we're doing instead of in the middle of something. But we've got to work our way there, right? That's something that comes a little bit later. In the beginning, we need the discipline. We have to set the banks of the river so that the energy can flow through. That was longer than I thought it would be, considering I could have told you that the way to do this is to contemplate. But alas, I'm long-winded. That's why I'm good at making YouTube videos. All right, y'all. Thank you for being here. Our next wisdom call, which is a time for you to connect to me, ask questions. If you feel stuck, anything Gene Keys related, I'll help you out, to include things going on in your life. It is Thursday. I want to say that's the 20th of February. It's at noon Eastern Standard Time. I'll put the link in the description. I'd love for you to be there. It's free. It's fun. I think it's useful. All right. Until next time.